Hi, my name is Pam O'Brien, and in this series of short videos I'm going to talk to you about how we can use MakeCode Arcade, which is here, to create some games. So I'm just going to talk you through the game. I'm going to show you the game that we're going to make. I'm going to talk you through the design of that game, and then I'm going to take you through the steps to actually implement the code that we have. So if we go to MakeCode Arcade here, and I'll just show you the game. So I'm just going to run the game. So this is running on a simulator, which is part of the MakeCode Arcade environment. So if I start it, we've got two characters, our duck and our car here. The duck can move on the arrow keys or the A, S, D, and W keys. And you can see it's being shown here on the simulator. Now if I move the duck, so you can see that it collides with the car, and you can see that the lives are going down here. And once I've lost all my lives, then it's game over. So there's a number of different gaming concepts at play here, and I'm going to take you through step by step each of those. But the first thing we need to do is we need to look at our design for our game, and once we have our design, then we can use that design and implement it within MakeCode Arcade. So for our games design, there's a few things we need to do. So some of the most basic questions you need to answer when you're designing a game is, who is going to be in it? Where are they? And what are they doing? So the who ends up being the sprites. So when we have characters in a game, we call them sprites. The where is going to be our background or our backdrop. So for any of you who have coded already in Scratch, then that would be the backdrop in Scratch. And then the what, this is the code to make them do things. So it's the code to make the sprites do things. And the kinds of things we want them to do are, we want them to move around. We want to be able to detect collisions. And this is a very big concept in gaming. So this collision detection, so we're going to have a look at that. We might want them to fire projectiles. And again, in that game that I have, we have some projectiles, but that's something that we'll look at in a later screencast. So this is the broad area that we want to look at when we're looking at games design. Now, I'm going to go through each of those step by step in relation to my game, and then we will talk about how we might go and implement that. So the first question we're going to look at is the who. And in my game, I have two characters or two sprites. Now again, at the start, I would say just use two sprites, because if you have a lot of different sprites, it can be hard to keep track of what each of them is doing at any given point in time. So we're just going to look at two sprites initially. Now, as I said, once you get going with that, you can have as many sprites as you want. So we have two sprites, and the first one is the duck, and the second one is the car. So that's our who taken care of. The where is the background. So in my case, I just had them on a plain blue background, but you can put, different backgrounds and whatever. I just want to, I suppose, focus on the gameplay as opposed to necessarily the background. But again, that's something that you can look at yourself. So this is just a plain blue background. So I'm just making some decisions. And again, you can make different decisions to the ones I made. That's absolutely no problem. And the what. Now, there's a number of different things that we can get the characters to do. So to start off with, I'm just going to go with the basic movement. So the what is that the duck moves when the arrow keys are pressed. So it's the up, the down, the left, and the right. So we just get them to move based on those. And then if we look at the car, well, the car is moving slightly differently. So the car comes in, so moves in straight lines. From the from the right of the screen to the left. So that's our basic movement. So that's part of the what. Now the next part of the what that I'm going to talk to you about is the collision detection. So what happens when they collide? So in the collision detection, we're going to say when the duck and car collide, then what is going to happen? So we're going to make them shake. So make it look like the screen is shaking. We're going to play a sound. And the final thing we're going to do is we're going to make the car disintegrate. Because that's a strong duck. So this is our basic gameplay. Now there's other things that I have included in that project, and I will talk you through those in a separate screencast. But for the moment, this is what we're going to focus on just for the purposes of this particular screencast. So what we want at the end of this screencast is that we have a basic game which has two characters on a background moving around and colliding. And that's, if we get that done in this one, then we'll look at how we can extend that in a future screencast or a future video. The easiest thing to do to find MakeCode is just to go to Google and type in MakeCode, and then you will get a number of options. And you just want to go to Microsoft MakeCode here, and then you will get this environment. So you'll see that there's a number of different things you can do here. You can code Lego Mindstorms through MakeCode. You can code the microbit. Some of you might already have seen that. There's a Minecraft environment here as well, but the one that we're looking at today is the arcade. So we just click into that. And again, when you come in, you'll see all your previous projects here. If you come in for the first time, you'll obviously have no previous projects, and I'm just going to create a new project. So I just click on the plus button, and I'm going to give it a name, and it's called Duck and Car. And I'm going to create that. And this gives me a blank environment here that I can work on. Now you'll see on the left hand side there's a little simulator. We've already seen that simulator in full screen, which we can do by clicking on the button here on the right hand side, launch in full screen. So when you're testing, I would suggest that you launch it in full screen. But as you're coding, you can see what's happening in this simulator on the left hand side, which is a really nice way of coding and just checking and testing as you're going. So there's a number of different things here. We've got sprites, so there's lots of different blocks for creating sprites. There's sprites for controlling those sprites, blocks for controlling those sprites even. Then we've got a number of different games-based blocks. There's music blocks, there's scene blocks, lots and lots of different blocks. So I'm going to talk you through just a few of those to get our basic game set up, and then we'll look at some other ones in future videos. So to start off with, so I'm going to pull out this set my sprite to sprite of kind player. So here you can see there's an on start block. So I'm going to say when the game starts, I'm going to create a sprite. So my sprite, if I click on the my sprite here, I can give it a new variable, and I'm just going to call it duck. So I'm going to say set duck. So my player is going to be a duck and my enemy is going to be the car. So in gameplay, you will often have a player and an enemy. So remember we were talking about the two sprites, the duck and the car. Well, the duck is the player and then the car is the enemy. So then I can click on this little box here, and this will give me an option either to create my own. So you can just draw your own sprite, like you can do in a lot of different coding environments, or I can click into the gallery, and if I click into the gallery you'll see that there's a number of pre-loaded sprites here. So the ones I'm going to use here are, I have got my little duck here, so I'm just going to select the duck, and then if I go down, so it just brings back in the duck, and that is of kind player. Now again, if I wanted to make that an enemy, I could just change it to enemy. So there's my duck. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to scene, and I'm going to set background color to. So remember we said we were going to set him up in a blue background. So I can set black background color to, and if I click, I'm just going to make it a light blue. You can make it whatever color you want. So I'm just going to make it a light blue because it just looks nice. So again, you can see there is my sprite in the background. So that's setting up my player sprite and then setting up my background. Now the next thing I need to do is I need to go into the controller block, and I can move the sprite with buttons. So if I pull that down and just drop it in here. Now I need to change the my sprite because my sprite is now called duck. And you'll see here there's a little warning showing up because it doesn't know what my sprite is. So if I click on duck, it says move duck now with buttons. And you'll see here that the little warning has now gone. So if I now press, you can see it here, I'm pressing the down arrow. Now he's going off the screen, so we need to look at that in a second. I'm pressing the up arrow, he's going off the screen at the top. I'm pressing the right arrow, and I'm pressing the left arrow. And again, I can use it with A moves back, D moves right, S moves down, and W moves up. So again, those are the buttons. And I can just get it to do that just by saying move duck with buttons. So now I've got my basic movement for my duck, and I've got it on the background. So the next thing I need to do is I need to look at how am I going to get my enemy character. So if I go into the game blocks here, you'll see there's an on-game update every 500 milliseconds. So that's every half a second. So I'm just going to pull that across here. Now I'm going to change the 500 milliseconds and I'm going to make it every 2 seconds. So I'm going to get a new car to come in every 2 seconds. So that makes it look like there's lots of different cars coming. So on-game update every 2000 milliseconds, which is 2 seconds. I'm going to create a new sprite. So I'm going to pull across to set my sprite again. This time I'm going to click on the my sprite and create a new variable, and this time I'm going to call it car. So every time I'm looking at the car or the duck and I'm trying to do, at least I know which one it is. Rather than calling it player and enemy, I'm calling it what it is so that I know. Now I'm going to choose my sprite, and again I come in here. I can either draw it or I can click on the gallery, and if I click on the gallery I can go down, and down at the very end we've got our cars. So this time I'm just going to have a red car. Now it doesn't matter. So again, think about what way it should be facing. So I want my car to come in from the right hand side, so I'm going to do this one. And then I just click done and it'll bring it back in. Now this time I want to, instead of a player, I'm going to make it an enemy. So I'm setting my car to sprite of kind enemy. So that's the first step for the car. Next, I'm going to set the position. So again, if I go to sprites, so here you'll see there's set my sprite position. And I'm just going to select the car. And the position is, I'm going to have it at pick random. So let's just have a look. So for the X position, I'm going to go for 160, which is right over on the right hand side. So here, and then on the Y, I'm just going to go to math and I'm going to pick a random. And the pick random I'm going to go is 0 to 120. So you'll see here, if I just start this, so it's setting the position every time. So I'm just restarting the simulator every time, and it's just picking a new position for the car, which you can see there on the right hand side. So the Y values go from 0 to 120, and the X value goes across the screen from 0 to 160. So that is now populating. So you can see all these little cars are popping up every 2 seconds. So that's giving me a car position, and the next thing I need to do is give me a car velocity, and that is what we're going to do in this video, and then we'll look at the collision detection in the next one. The last thing we're going to do is we're going to set the velocity, and we're going to set the velocity of the car. So we click car here, and we're going to set the X velocity to -100. So if I pull that across like that, so the velocity goes from -100 to +100. So if I want to go from the right hand side to the left, I will set the X velocity to -100, and I'll set the Y velocity to 0. So if you want to do different velocities, and we'll look at that in another video, then we'll look at how we can get them to move in different directions. So for now, I'm just doing my testing here, as you can see. So you can see that the car is coming in every 2 seconds from the right hand side to the left hand side and just running across the screen. And sometimes it just kind of runs through the duck. In the next video, we're going to look at how we can do that collision detection and some other aspects of gameplay.